Welcome, ladies and gents. It's that time where we go through and rate each and every one of the drivers, how they got on over the whole weekend of the Bahrain Grand Prix. And as ever, we start with the race winner, Oscar, the man Piastri, OP81. He absolutely smashed it out the park this weekend. He was brilliant. From FP1 all the way through qualifying session, he looked like he had the edge of the whole field, and especially his teammate, Lando Norris, who is potentially his main title rival, considering how good and strong that car is. And we know the Red Bull and Max Verstappen, we can't count him out. Maybe he's going to have topsy-turvy races like this, Verstappen, and who knows for how long, especially with 26 coming along. How much will they work on this year's car? It looks like a straight battle between the two McLaren drivers, and so far it's 2-1 to Oscar Piastri in terms of wins. And this weekend he was flawless from lights to flag. He managed everything so well. After the safety car restart, he was outstanding. A 15-second win, the biggest winning margin we've seen of the season so far. He was comfortably a couple of tenths ahead of Lando Norris all weekend in qualifying. And in the race, he just managed it absolutely brilliantly. He came, conquered, and did the job that the whole world expected of McLaren. For all the world, it should have been a 1-2. But Oscar did his part and he took a brilliant win. I'm giving him, no surprises here, a 10 out of 10. Second place man, George Russell, and he is another one that had a brilliant weekend. Qualifying was dampened by that one place grid penalty they got for coming to the end of the pit lane. I think it was at Q2 or Q3 where it restarted a bit early before the release of the timings. I could understand it a little bit. The FIA and the stewards were sort of determined to stop this happening if it was just a team taking a bit of a fine. The big teams might just think, it's worth it if we can get ahead of the field, and we'll do that. So they wanted to stop that and make a precedent that if you do it, you'll get a one-place grid penalty. There was some lenience given on that, so next time out there'll be bigger penalties handed out. But for George Russell, he didn't let that bother him one bit, did he? He was absolutely phenomenal in that race. Held off everybody that came for a fight with him, didn't he? Lando Norris early doors, then Charles Leclerc, and then Lando Norris again. And at the end, it was even more impressive. He did that with a brake-by-wire issue. And, Lando Norris wasn't absolutely miles away. He was right behind him, pressuring him. And one little slip-up mistake from George Russell would have meant Norris would have slipped past. He defended well from him brilliantly when he did get up and close. And from there on, you just cannot commend Russell enough for the job that he's done at Mercedes so far this season. He's been phenomenal. He was taken on the lead role of the lead driver at Mercedes. Now Lewis is gone. Some can say he probably did that, especially in terms of qualifying last season, but this season he's really stepped it up in the races as well. That car does look much better than it has done for the previous seasons. Easier or less difficult to drive, should we say. And George Russell managed it. I thought this might be one where, I know I predicted him to qualify in third place. He did qualify there in the end, well, second really, but I'm going to take that as predictions when I get to that. But why not? Got to take every point when I can. But he absolutely maximised everything from start to finish. He's just been phenomenal, George Russell. He's really taken on that mantelpiece and he's done an absolute tremendous job in this race as well. He was, can't fault him. There's not one part where I can think, should he have done this better? Should he have done that better? He absolutely got the maximum out of the car, and he's beaten McLaren, which won by 15 seconds. One of them anyway. So, absolutely incredible job. I'm giving him a 10 out of 10. Third place man, Lando Norris, and he had a shocking qualifying session that put him down in sixth place, but he put all that right at the start of the race. Got himself onto third place, and then he thought it'd make easy work of George Russell and then be right behind his teammate. It didn't work out like that. Charles Leclerc pegged him back, made the pass on him, and from there onwards, it just got really difficult and struggling to repass Charles Leclerc later on in the race when he came strong. And then for all the world, it looked like he'd be easy meat when he got to George Russell, who was struggling, like we know, with the brakes. And that car in Oscar's hand was, 15 seconds up ahead. So we knew he had good advantage in the car, and he had the right tyres on. He had the perfect tyres for that second stint. The mediums were by far the best tyre. The softs were good. I mean, they weren't as bad as the hards, which were absolutely shocking that were put on the Ferraris, but he should have got George Russell. I think he made hard work of that pass as well. I think he went down the wrong way when he put all his eggs in that one basket on the last or second to last lap when he went round the outside and tried to do it round the outside. You're not going to do that in George Russell. He'd run you wide just like Max Verstappen did, so I'm surprised he tried that. And it's been a difficult weekend for him. Surprised to say that he's still come home third place, but it should have been at worst a second place for him when he's going up for the title and he's giving it all beans, and like he did in Abu Dhabi, saying next year is my year. And so far Oscar's pegged him, and Norris is the one that's coming up with these little mistakes, and he's been doing it, well, for me, far too often enough, and he really needs to cut them out and get to the bottom of it. For the ratings though, I'm still giving him a 7 out of 10. Fourth place man Charles Leclerc, and actually he was disappointed, saying this Ferrari is not quite where it needs to be just yet, but I thought he put a brilliant performance in. Third in qualifying, that moved him up to second once Russell got that penalty. From there onwards though, it looked like early doors he did struggle a little bit, but then caught up brilliantly on the second stint when he was flying on the mediums, and for all the world it looked like Ferrari were in the hunt potentially for possibly a race win. Who knows at the end how they would have performed on that soft stint but for the safety car, which really cost him and the Ferrari team dearly. But he was brilliant. A brilliant move to pass George Russell, Lando Norris, and then he was right up behind George Russell, just couldn't get the move on George. And then that second stint, which would have gone really long for them to put them on the softs, didn't quite materialise. They had to go on the hards. Could they have risked it like the Mercedes and gone on the softs? They probably should have, because they were seeing how horrible a tyre that anyone that put on that hards, like the Williams, like the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, realised that this is just not the tyre to be on. It degraded really horribly wrong quickly. It got really hot, degraded faster than it should have, and even probably as fast as the softs did, some of the drivers say. So interesting that they went for that choice in the end. Could they have been a bit more brave like Russell was? They probably should have. When we look what Russell managed in the end, and would that have given him enough to hold off Norris potentially for that podium position? Probably, and I think that's what will be the most disappointing from him. I think the safety car was the real kick in the nuts for the Ferrari boys and Charles Leclerc, and what looked like potentially would have been a brilliant race. And I think that's where the biggest robbery here of the safety car was that we missed out on this strategy calls that we were seeing of people on the hards, people on the mediums, people on the softs, and it was so mixed. And then we always get that crescendo at the end, and it was when we get a safety car like that, it just throws off, and it works in the favour of some. It definitely didn't work in the favour of Ferrari and Charles Leclerc in particular. But I'm still giving him an 8 out of 10 because I think he drove brilliantly well, especially in the middle part of the stint. Them two Ferraris came alive. Fifth place man, Lewis Hamilton. A good race actually in the end. When you think he started in 9th, finished in 5th place. Him, like Charles Leclerc, came alive at the second stint. He managed to pass Jack Doohan, Max Verstappen, Ocon. He was flying. And again, the safety car came absolutely the worst time for him. They stuck on the hards, and he really struggled on there, even more so than his teammate. But overall, he was much happier with his weekend, and he felt like this was something clicked during this race, and he's kind of understood the car a bit more and know how it wants to be driven, which is probably crucial for Lewis Hamilton, especially going forward from here. But overall, I thought it was a pretty solid weekend for him. Another one, I'm giving him an 8 out of 10. Much better than what we've seen from him. 8 is a bit generous, possibly, but I'm giving him an 8. Sixth place finisher, Max Verstappen. We don't say that very often. He had a stinker of a race when you look at it. He had a slow start, and then he had slow pit stops. His car was just absolutely nowhere. We got 2 slow pit stops for him, didn't we? First with the issue with the lights in the pits, and then the second with the front right coming off. But as ever, Max Verstappen is Max Verstappen, and he fought right to the very end and managed to steal that 6th place of Pierre Gasly in a car that was just absolutely nowhere. They went on the hards. It really did not work for him and the car. And then the safety car, when it came out, really benefited him because he was in last place. Can't remember the last time I've seen him in P20. He didn't pit. He had absolutely nothing to lose, and that moved him up into 7th place. From there, as everybody else around him pitted, the biggest beneficiary of the safety car was probably him, actually. And then he drove brilliant to a scruffy finish past Pierre Gasly, and that was probably all she could roll. You're probably glad because that was by far the best he could have hoped for when he was last at one point in the race. And then giving him a 6 out of 10. 7th place man Pierre Gasly started in 4th after a brilliant qualifying session to finish in P7. I think he'll be kicking himself a little bit that he got passed by Max Verstappen on the very last lap, but overall a very, very good weekend from Alpine. He was brilliant at the outstanding qualifying session. In the race he was on for P6, which was some very, very good points for the team. He was probably never really going to hold on to P4 considering the cars around him, and I don't think that Alpine is particularly quick. And he can overtake here, so there was nothing really he could have done too much to keep everyone behind, unless he defended like Carlos Sainz did. But he chose not to. It was a wise choice, but brought home some very good points for the team. He was very, very happy with that, and rightly so. It was a real job well done for him. I've given him a 9 out of 10. Esteban Ocon up in 8th place. Next up, he had what worked out to be a very, very good race. Started in 14th, finished in P8 in the end. It looked like for all the world they'll be out the points, but he, like Verstappen, had nothing to lose. Braved it because he had 6 laps over all the tyres and the guys around him, and managed so well to hold back Yuki Tsunoda when the safety car came out. He stayed out, like I said, with Max Verstappen, and that was a real big result for him. And a double points finish for Haas team. Ocon was brilliantly holding on for Yuki Tsunoda at the end, and he just managed the car and the tyres so well from there. Hats off to him, a brilliant job. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. 9th place finish for Yuki Tsunoda. Much better weekend for him. Got himself into Q3 in that Red Bull. He started in 10th, finished in 9th in the end. Another one, struggled with the pit stops in the Red Bull with the lights issue, causing him a slow stop as well. And then he'll be just disappointed that he didn't pass Ocon, because had he done that, a P8 finish would have been much better when he's only a couple of places behind Max, the great Verstappen. But a much better weekend for Yuki Tsunoda. He can be happy with that. Much more of where he kind of wants to be and expected to be fighting for good points. I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. 10th place finisher, the last of the points man, Ollie Berman, with a brilliant drive in the end. Started last, and to come home and pick up the point in the end was absolutely brilliant. And he defended so magnificently well from Kimi Antonelli, who was mega throughout that race with the overtakes. He was decisive, was Antonelli, but Berman defended absolutely fantastically. He had all the tyres on, but an excellent defensive drive to keep Antonelli back. And he brought home and finished a double points finish for the team. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10 as well. Kimi Antonelli finished in 11th place. He'll be disappointed he got the 1 place grid penalty as well, because it was a decent qualifying session from him in 4th, but then started 5th. He looked so racy past Max Verstappen. He was flying, this kid, putting on all the moves, but then the safety car really cost him the most out of anybody, because he pitted for the 3rd stop onto the softs, and then the safety car came out 1 or 2 laps after. That really did kick him down, but for that it looked like he'd on for some real solid points, and he was just a bit miffed of what the strategy call was there from Mercedes. I think he was just really unlucky with the safety car. But I think the strategy call probably from Mercedes was a bit risky as well, because they, even George Russell going when he pitted under the safety car for soft, saying this was brave, and he was on soft a couple of laps before that potentially. So, yeah, not quite sure. Should they have let him run longer on the tyres that he had in that middle stint? Possibly the wrong call there, and that caught him out under the safety car as well. But I thought it was a very good drive from him up until that point. I was so impressed with his overtaking. He was decisive, clean, and some really good racing. but I'm still giving him an 8 out of 10. 12th place finish for Alex Albon, and he, like Kimi Antonelli, was one that got really badly caught out by the safety car, because for all the world it looked like it was a net P8. The safety car came out, like the guys Ocon and Verstappen, who finished ahead of him, they just carried on. Williams pitted. He struggled on the on the hards at one point in the race. It was the wrong tyre to go on after his first stop. I think they should have gone medium softs. Probably the best tyre choice, but once they picked that hard, it was, you know, he did a decent enough job on that hard actually to potentially put himself a net P8. But he'll go home disappointed because it should have been points finish for the Williams. They look strong here this weekend, and Alex looked particularly good as well, but for the safety car got caught out on that. A real shame, but I'm giving him a 6 out of 10. 13th place finish for Nico Hülkenberg. He started in 16th. He had the drama of the whole quali lap, which should have not counted because of track limits. He started in 16th, then should have been out in Q1. In the race, in the end, he was disqualified for plank wear again, like Lewis Hamilton was before that. So we've seen that a couple of times now. Is this strange how this is another guy or teams getting caught out by this? So interesting to see what excuse to come up with there for them. But a P13 finish, I thought that was a pretty solid result for him in that car, probably the best they could have hoped for. Nothing really lost because he wasn't in the points with this disqualification, but he'll be disappointed overall. But I've given him a 6 out of 10 because to get that car in that position I thought was a pretty decent job. 14th place finish for Isaac Hadjar. The Red Racing Bulls, if you want to call them, struggled here this weekend. We've seen them being very good and looked like they were in the points. It didn't look like that was possible for them this weekend. He started in 12th, finished in 15th. He was in a bit of no man's land, wasn't looking like he would get past Nico Hülkenberg, was comfortably ahead of Jack Doohan behind him. Brought home some decent, wasn't in decent points, but a decent finish in the end. Probably the best he could have hoped for again, like many others around him. I'm giving him a 5 out of 10. 15th place finish for Jack Doohan. Started 11th and he was running in P8, and it looked like for all the world he'd hold on for some points in the end, but then he got just mugged, didn't he? Down in P12 before he knew it. From there onwards, he then got a track limits 5-second penalty, which cost him, and then shame he was just out of the points. And the race, though, he looked much better for him than what we've seen previously. I felt his qualifying was pretty decent, close enough to the top 10, and he ran in the top 10 in the race as well. Shame no points for him, but it's a decent enough performance for him. It looks like it's kind of coming together. It's headed in the right direction after the early season crashes. I'm giving him a 5 out of 10 for this weekend though. Fernando Alonso finished in 16th place. That's probably all she could have wrote in that Aston Martin. That's been horrible, that car this weekend. The safety car really didn't help him at all. Like Ferrari, they went for the hards and it was not the tyre to be on. And the car that's struggling anyway probably just compounded matters for Fernando Alonso. A weekend to forget for him and the team, 4 out of 10. 17th place man, Liam Lawson. He's absolutely struggled this weekend. The amount of, out in qualifying, P17 is qualified, finished the race in P17. He got a 5-second penalty for a collision, and he got another 10-second penalty for causing a collision again. He just looks like he's lost his head. He's absolutely nowhere. He just really needs to just put his early season form behind him, just have a complete cut and just pretend like the next race is the first race of the season in Saudi Arabia, and just sort of start from there as if he's, you know, finished last year and in the Racing Bull, and he's carried on there for this season, because it's probably the only way he can get his head around what's been a horrible first 4 races of the season for him, and it's just got, you know, horribly worse. A 1 out of 10 for me for this weekend. 18th place for Lance Stroll. He's another one that's had a stinker of a weekend. Qualified in 19th, finished in 18th in the end. That car, like Fernando Alonso's, was absolutely nowhere. He was a second behind Liam Lawson, but didn't look like he was going to put any real pressure on him. He's had 2 poor races in a row now, and he kind of needs to put this back behind him. Are we seeing the original Lance Stroll we all know, after some early season promise? One to forget for him as well. A 2 out of 10 for me. 19th place finish for Gabby Bortoleto, another young rookie who's struggled. He started off his season pretty well, but he was comfortably off the back of Lance Stroll. Didn't look like he was going to put much pressure off him. And he needs to, another one like Lance Stroll, needs to get back into his early season rhythm that we saw was, you know, he's actually really promising as a rookie, but he's had 2 not very good races for me this weekend. I'm giving him a 3 out of 10. The last finisher, the last place for DNF for Carlos Sainz. He had, well, one hell of a struggle of a race, didn't he? Started and qualified in 8th, did all for all the world, tried to just do anything he could to hold on to that point. He forced Kimi Antonelli off the track with that dive bomb that he pulled on him. Unlucky with the incident with Yuki Tsunoda, which caused big damage to him in the end. And then retired from that. The only thing that I wasn't sure about though, because he did get a 10-second penalty for forcing a driver off the track, and I'm not sure if he at any point or at what point he served that penalty before the DNF. And we've seen, you know, Red Bull send Perez out to, you know, serve a penalty and then retire the lap later. So I'm not sure how that will affect Carlos Sainz. Hopefully not, and you know they can move on from there. He completed a significant part of the race. I'm giving him a 3 out of 10 because it was a scruffy one for him. On to the predictions review. For qualifying, I had Oscar Piastri to take pole position. I thought it'd be a McLaren 1-2 with Lando Norris in 2nd. He had a stinker down in 6th. And George Russell in 3rd. I'm going to take the point for Russell. He did start in 3rd, even though he did get 2nd in the qualifying. Leclerc was a surprise for me, up in 2nd place, which was a brilliant session for him and the Ferrari boys. For the race, I thought Oscar Piastri would take the win. He absolutely did. And I thought it should have been a McLaren 1-2. It should have been, really, for all the world. Lando Norris should have got past George Russell, who did a brilliant job to bring it home in 2nd. For 3rd place, so I had it as Max Verstappen, who, you know, it was Norris in the end. And I did not expect the Red Bull to struggle as badly as it did here, despite, you know, the brilliant win in Japan. I knew it'd be a struggle here, and I thought he'd probably have enough to come home in 3rd, but to finish just about 6th on the last lap shows the topsy-turvy races that we might see for Red Bull when it doesn't really suit their car. I had a good weekend for the McLarens, a 1-3. I think I'll take that. That was a good race weekend. It should have been a 1-2. Just didn't quite come off for Norris in the end. I thought it'd be a bad race for the Haas, but how wrong was I? Double point finish. An absolutely brilliant weekend for them. You know, for all the world, I think it should have been Williams that should have taken them double points. But hey-ho, you know, Haas did the job this weekend. And thankfully, we don't have long to wait. Next off to Saudi. Watch out for the race preview coming on that shortly. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you in the next one.